If you ask me, there are a lot of things that we don't need more of, like AI car videos, pickleball courts, and expensive SUVs. As much as I enjoyed the new Land Cruiser when I first drove it, its price tag put it into a tough market. That's why I thought it was going to be a low-volume niche vehicle, but I was wrong. So today, let's talk about how this big Toyota beat the odds. The latest numbers show the new Land Cruiser exponentially outselling its prior generations, despite the price tag starting at close to $60,000. The first and most critical reason behind the success of this new Land Cruiser, in my opinion, is that it's a shot of nostalgia without the sacrifices of its alternatives. If you want a retro-looking off-road SUV, the first two vehicles that probably come to mind are the Jeep Wrangler and Ford Bronco. I enjoy both of those because if you take the top off, you feel connected to your surroundings, but the problem is a lot of people don't want to feel connected to their surroundings all of the time. And those convertible tops and designs are going to be very noisy for the daily grind, especially if you're on the highway often. So if you don't want to worry about hearing loss, or you want something that just feels a little bit more insulated from the outside world, you might go with a vehicle like the Land Rover Defender. Okay, now you have to deal with Land Rover depreciation and British repair bills. If you still want something a bit refined but more old school with a pretty solid BMW turbocharged inline-6 under the hood, you can go with the Inneos Grenadier, but that's a brand that most people haven't even heard of. And for the best of the best, there is the G-Wagon, but that's also twice the money of basically anything we've talked about. So now the Land Cruiser is starting to look pretty attractive. Briefly, if you enjoy fun, detailed car content, consider subscribing and hitting the notification bell. If we hit 100,000 subs before 2026, I'll make another special, financially questionable series of your choosing. Thank you. Compared to those other nostalgic SUVs, the LC also comes with a reputation for reliability. And before the comments expose the evil of turbos, here's my stance. How well an engine is built, designed, and maintained matters much more than how it breathes. I too was hoping for less complexity, but let's not act like it's a time bomb until it starts ticking. It might not be as versatile as a Grand Highlander, but there is enough space in here to move around some bulky furniture or rear seat passengers who are trying to bulk. This is a sensible compromise compared to other rugged throwback SUVs, even more so when you consider the slightly above average fuel economy. But pragmatic thinking is not why you drop 60 or 70 grand on a new SUV. There should be an it factor. Around the world, this is known as the Land Cruiser Prado, a vehicle that's less substantial than its full-size brother, which is how it was able to drop its price compared to the last North American cruiser. That said, this nameplate and this style carry a stronger legacy and more exclusivity than the 4Runner. Add that to its capability, and I think there's a very compelling wildcard at play. In order to be a Land Cruiser, this has to do the most when it comes to the drivetrain. I wish the powertrain too, but we'll get into that shortly. So this is going to use a full-time four-wheel drive system. That means you have a proper lockable center differential. You can also lock the rear differential. This is a different kind of design than something like the four-wheel drive auto systems that you can get in a Wrangler or Ford Bronco. Compared to most grades of the 4Runner, you can use this as a four-wheel drive vehicle in the rain without fear of any binding in the system. Of course, this is also going to get Toyota's off-road software tricks like the crawl control, which can help control your speed, dig you out of sand pits, and whatnot. This also has the ability to redirect torque to the side with more traction through brake usage, partially compensating for the lack of a front locker. And most grades here will also have a disconnectable front sway bar for maximum articulation. I wish that Toyota would offer their TRD lift kit package with this model especially, as an extra few inches and maybe some larger knobby tires would really help this access its full potential. Something that definitely leaves room for improvement though is this powertrain. The more that I drive it, the more that I just feel this was the wrong choice for a Land Cruiser. So this is a 2.4 liter inline four that is both boosted and electrified, which is good for a 0 to 60 in mid to high 7-second range according to my tests. When you ask more from it, it just sounds and accelerates kind of like a Camry. However, the last 18 months have proven that flat-out acceleration isn't a big concern to this buyer. Instead, the Cruiser delivers unusable power. This does make a peak of 465 pound-feet of torque. The electric motor is sandwiched in between the engine and an 8-speed automatic transmission, so it really doesn't need to downshift in a lot of different scenarios, helping the power feel very healthy there at low speeds or in normal passing scenarios. And I think a lot of people see the value in this towing 6,000 pounds versus, the 4,000 or so that the Bronco and Wrangler manage, because that makes all of the difference when it comes to towing other vehicles. Really, if you want more effortless performance, go with the Lexus GX that has the 3.4 liter twin turbocharged V6. That is just a much more relaxed powertrain, and it's also more refined. Sometimes the shifts disturb the cabin a little bit more than I'd like. If we're trying to understand why this has taken away some sales from its competition, and probably the 4Runner, the look is crucial. This thing's tall stance and retro lines make it stand out. What I think makes this especially distinct is that it doesn't necessarily try to take us back to the 60s and 70s like the Bronco. It's more so going back to the 90s. You see that most in the headlights, the beltline, and silhouette. The mirrors and two-tone paint option are classy nods to the past as well. In person, this is sharp looking and it's still functional with cool details thrown throughout, like fog lights that can change from white to amber. And you can pop open the rear glass on its own for extra long items. Though there are a few things that I think Toyota should have addressed. First, the ground clearance of just 8.7 inches puts it below that of the 4Runner, and around the rear you have this huge plug that is inserted. I get that it's supposed to hide the trailer hitch, but I really think they could have done something a little bit more sleek. On the inside, the Land Cruiser makes some smart moves. The layout isn't straight out of a Tacoma, and the view outward with its big windows and upright windshield is special in 2025 too. I think another thing that has made this successful overall is the comfort. If you go with the 1958, this will feel shockingly cheap for a almost $60,000 SUV, but the standard Land Cruiser is going to have these comfortable seats that are highly adjustable. In fact, you can option extendable thigh cushions, which I'd recommend if you're tall. You also have ventilated seats and much nicer touch points and materials than what you get with the 1958. In fact, you can even ventilate your snacks with the available cool box. Or you can bring an electric griddle thanks to a 2400 watt outlet in the back. I also want to commend Toyota for keeping the tech and the controls straightforward. I think the only issue here is that the floor is quite high, especially in the trunk. I actually just tried to move a couch, and while it did fit in here, the load floor, one, made it difficult to get the thing inside, and because the seats don't fold flat either, it actually could not make it all the way into the SUV, so I had to have the door open, which resulted in 30 minutes of beeping and lingering tinnitus. I have a few other nitpicks. US models should at least offer heated rear seats. The wide center tunnel eats into my knee room, and I'd like to see a sunglasses holder too. For a truck-based SUV with a solid rear axle, this doesn't ride half bad. I don't feel as much of the road here as I do in the new Tacoma. This still does feel like a body-on-frame chassis. You hit a larger pothole, and it will cause the Cruiser to shudder, but it remains confident and planted, and I actually like how this steering feels. At speed, it develops a nice weight to it. You feel the vibrations of the engine through the wheel, which maybe some people don't like, but that helps me feel somewhat connected to the truck, and I think it's fairly precise. Driving this around town or on the highway, I haven't had many issues. However, its bouncy ride over uneven pavement can grow a little bit old after a while. This thing is gonna have some body roll. It's not gonna want to change direction fast. That is the sacrifice that you're making when you go with this kind of off-road SUV. While this has easily outsold my expectations of it, there are some things that I think Toyota could improve on to make an even bigger splash. First and foremost, they need a smaller and cheaper version, like the FJ Cruiser. They could give it a more basic, cost-effective powertrain to drive down the cost, as some folks don't need the Hybrid Max. Yes, it does have a good amount of torque, that's great, but it adds complication, it's heavy, it eats into the cargo space, and this is also a physically large vehicle. If Toyota can make that smaller Land Cruiser come to life here soon, I think they'd have an even stronger hold on the outdoorsy market than they already do. Other small revisions like heated rear seats, less annoying driving aids, and a larger fuel tank would be appreciated too. But I think the largest obstacle that the Land Cruiser has so far overcome is the Lexus GX. If you can afford a fully loaded Land Cruiser like this, then the Lexus might also fit your bill. You get more refinement, you get a more effortless powertrain, you get more space because there's no hybrid battery sitting there in the back. It just comes at the cost of some of the character with the design. And I think that is what I originally underestimated. The Toyota's retro swagger is the special sauce, not the cherry on top. I realize that more each time I drive one. If you can stomach an upper class price tag and the 4-pot hybrid, this blend of style, features, capability, comfort, and reputation is difficult to find elsewhere. Thanks for watching. And thank you to my channel members for helping me improve my videos. Consider joining for additional content. I'll catch you in the next one.